Okay, so Jay, I am so excited about our guest. I say that about everybody, but honestly, Nicole Will is so awesome. And not only is she just awesome,
She's
period.
beautiful.
She's very beautiful. This is the wrong podcast, people.
Okay, sorry.
This is not a beauty podcast, but it could be. So we've already talked about her skincare regimen, people, but she has quite the confession, and it's not that she just uses avocados. So here's the thing. She's here though today to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Jay, I know she's got some good stuff to talk to us about. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about our sister?
I know I got to be careful because I give all the info.
Don't give it all away yet.
I know. I got to be careful about that. Okay. So Nicole's self-description. She's a collaborator, but here's my favorite. She's a cheerleader for others. Yeah, I know. For others by sharing the good work that they are doing in the world for the elder community. And immediately she gets the sister stamp of approval. I'm like, yes, she's a cheerleader. So her caregiving story, it started with her grandmother who moved in with them. But Nicole says she became one of her best friends, and that makes me feel like our grandmother Bird.
And she had a Gigi.
I know. And then her Aunt Dot, who she describes as a Spitfire. We like her too.
We already like her.
I know. She has worked in the aging and senior space for over 20 years. And then she didn't have anything else to do. So she created a podcast.
She started one.
I know. And she's like us, willGather podcast. Then she also, she started a boutique gift shop in honor of her grandmother. Nicole, you don't have anything to do. So you're just adding all this stuff.
She's just got a lot of free time, apparently.
No. So, okay. So it's Nicole's turn to talk now. You know I am.
Let's do it.
I know we're ready.
Yay!
So, okay, Nicole, you started at really a young age with caring, but you watched your mom care, and which is really interesting because you got to care, but you got to watch care, and it kind of led you down the path of your life. So what happened? When did it start with your grandma?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you.
Yay! Thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here. You guys are like the ultimate hype women, and I am here for it because I think that's where we just gravitate towards each other, because we're like, okay, we're going to cheer each other on. I love it so much. So thank you for having me first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Oh my word. So I was 15 years old when my grandma came to move in with my family. So 15, right? That is you're starting 9th grade. I was starting high school. The world was ahead of me.
You were cool.
I was cool. I thought I was so cool. The world was ahead of me, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. So I'm not only oldest daughter, everything I had to do was first, right? Paving the way for my family. And my parents decided at this, how dare they, as I'm starting high school, decided to move out of my childhood home, which I had loved. I lived there since I was born, and move houses to a different home to accommodate my grandma moving in with us. So we had to find a house that had more space and almost like a mother-in-law apartment.
Yeah.
And we made this move as I'm starting high school, still the same city, but totally different neighborhood. We had to drive to the different junior high where I was going at the time. So that was the age, and it just marked just the change of so many things that were to come that I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
So was your grandmother on your mom's side or your dad's?
My mom's side. Yeah.
Okay.
And my grandma had lived in Illinois. That's where my mom was born and raised. And I loved going to visit grandma and grandpa. And unexpectedly, my grandfather left my grandma. And so my grandma, all of a sudden, her whole life had changed.
Wow.
So I have a lot of compassion for that
Mhm.
as I look back and reflect, but not at 15. I did not. I was excited grandma was coming. And also, like, it was an intrusion, to be honest.
Mhm.
And looking back now, I have so much compassion for that woman that had to change her whole life, leave her city, her state that she'd known, to come move up to Minnesota, where we know the winters are not.
Hey, I hear it snows in Minnesota.
Oh my word. Yeah, we just had a snowstorm and I texted a friend and I said, oh, we only got 13 inches.
That's like insulting, like Snowmageddon, and you all are like, whatever.
We were expecting 2 feet, only got 13. Okay, I'll
Totally
take it.
fine. We walked it off, whatever. That's so interesting. And how old was your grandmother when she came to live with you guys? Do you recall about her age?
I would say that, okay, if I'm doing the math kind of backwards, in her later 60s.
Okay.
That's interesting that she and her
through.
Husband decided to the split. And
she did not.
Yeah, I know, right? I didn't do that on my first marriage either. Hi, secret. He left. And so I'm like, okay, so I don't want to be like, JJ's looking at me. You guys can't see her shaking her head. I'm like, quitter. And so that's fine.
I'm like, oh Lord. Oh Lord.
But that probably taught you some stuff too. Like your grandmother was resilient. And said, I'm not going to be defined by that. So she comes, so you've got your 60-some-year-old grandmother coming over to live with you, and you had a relationship, but it's this multi-states away relationship. So it's not like you lived down the road like we did. We lived down the road from our grandmother, grew up with her, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
Yeah. So the relationship, you're right. We went from where it was almost this glamorous time when we would have time with grandma and grandpa because it was so special because it didn't happen that often.
Right.
So then you're in the real life, day to day. Grandma and I shared a bathroom, we're on the.
I'm like, my grandmother, she had dentures. I'm like, did she leave her dentures on the thing? That just is normal for us. Like, well, there's birds. We called her grandmother Bird. And we're like, well, there's Bird's dentures on the side next to my toothbrush. I think I'll brush my teeth and hers is for good measure.
Yeah. You just learn so much about someone when you share a restroom.
Yes, you do.
And it was, she came to all of our sporting events, and she was this very strong woman. She was super classy, dressed to the nines all the time. And she didn't care what anyone thought about her, which I loved, because growing up, my mom, I think maybe because of growing up with my grandma's personality, was very much of, worried what everyone would think. And I inherited that. I've recovered from that, but I inherited that. And I loved watching my grandma just not even care. She would cheer the loudest and yell at the ref. And, my mom would have to not sit by her because she would be so embarrassed because my mom cared what everyone thought.
JJ does to me. Like I show my rear and JJ's like, oh God, look at her. You can even see her now. She's like,
I'm like, I got to move. I got to find another podcast. Right? I mean, I got to go.
And there was so many times where it was hard, and I loved the time with her. I would go every morning. We'd watch the Today Show together. I'd catch the headlines, and we'd have coffee, and she'd be knitting, and we'd chat about the day. And I'd tell her all about, who I was dating at the time. And I could fill her in on, friend dynamics. And she always had this different perspective than my mom. And so having that balance in my life of strong woman, strong personality, her lived experience, coupled with the compassion and the understanding of my mom, was this beautiful, marriage of balance in my life growing up. But there was also, a lot of challenges with, I always felt like my grandma was watching all that we were doing too. And as me and my siblings, we're in the teenage years, let me tell you. And so we did all the things that teenagers do. My poor mother, we definitely would stay out too late or get in trouble for something. Instead of having like one set of parents, it was like one set of parents plus grandma. Yep. Just judging. No, I don't know if she was judging. Maybe she was, but
oh girl, we all judging. We women. We're like, I don't know if I'd let you do that.
Exactly. You are spot on with that. Yeah. You were
what was it like? Do you like watching because your grandmother's there, your grandmother raised your mom, and then that would have been a lot of pressure for your mom, I think, in raising you guys, knowing how, and her wanting to, everybody wants to make it their own. And so she's going to say, I want to raise my children this way. And then you have your mom who you've got this conflict because you try to please your parents.
Right.
And yet you want to go out on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was that? How did the moving in change your relationship? Well, I heard a little bit about that, but how did it change your relationship with your mom? And did that change your relationship with your mom and you?
Yeah, it did. It did. It definitely changed it. I think my mom felt a lot of pressure to try to get it right and to not prove, I don't know if that's the word, but you're right. Like, so her mom's watching her parent and the family dynamics. And my mom felt like she needed to do the right things. And I think she would say, as we've had conversations as adults, that as much as she thought she was doing the right thing at the time, which we all think we're doing, it put a huge strain on our relationship because rather than maybe making different choices that would protect our relationship or even encourage our communication or mother-daughter dynamic, it made it so much more challenging because there was not a lot of grace and there was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of, you're going to do this. I'm the parent rather than, which is, we need those times as well, but it didn't lead to like constructive dialogue, I would say.
Yeah. I could see that because it's different. You have another person watching you, different than your dad and your mom as a team parenting. You've got an extra set of eyes, like watching a little bit. So that's interesting how that impacted. So you mentioned sometimes feeling a little bit like, I feel kind of jealous.
Yeah. Oh, I will talk about that.
Kind of nose into that.
Yeah. Well, there's two parts of my life where that really stood out. So not only, younger person going through high school, I needed my mom, and I always felt like being the oldest child of 4, her capacity was limited. And then having my grandma be a part of all of the aspects of our life, which was so wonderful and hard at the same time because it was just another person, another dynamic, another, if we're going to go get coffee and I'm going to go shopping with my mom, grandma would come, which looking back, I love that. But there were times as that teenage person that I'm like, gosh, I just really wanted my mom. So I would say that we really did not have a close relationship until I was in college, graduated from college, where our relationship was more friendship and not that mother-daughter dynamic. And I would say, and she would say this too. I remember her looking at me, and this is nothing she doesn't already know that we've talked about, but I remember her looking at me and I think it was like 16. And I was like, Mom, I just want you to be my friend, and she was like, I cannot be your friend. I'm your parent. And I get the logic of that. But at that time, I just really wanted my mom and I wanted a friend in my mom. And obviously looking back, she would say that, her perspective is maybe shifted. And I get, we all have different parent philosophies. So that disclosure out there. And I get the line of that of you do need to be a parent and not just be the best friend. I felt like they could live together, right? You can have rules and boundaries, but you can also have relationship. And so that was part of it, my teenage years. And then if I fast forward, so my grandma has a sister, just the two of them, Aunt Dot.
Oh, it's your grandma's sister, is Aunt Dot?
The preface being the Spitfire.
The Spitfire.
Okay. That's like our Aunt Jane.
Aunt Dot and Gigi Betty. Well, those two sisters were left to be raised by their grandparents because my grandma and my Aunt Dot's parents, their dad passed away when they were really, really young.
Okay.
So sad, hotel fire. And then my great grandma needed to raise them, and they moved to another spot where the grandparents could be involved. So, this is kind of like generation.
Oh, yeah.
Those two sisters did not get along. They did, but they didn't. Aunt Dot, big personality, ended up working for the Department of Defense, was the secretary to the judge of the Nuremberg war trials, traveled the world, super Spitfire, and lived in California her whole life. And thought we were minions that we lived in Minnesota.
That's fantastic.
You're not cultured. You're
not even probably educated because there's so much snow you don't go to school.
Guess where you're going to end up, Aunt Dot.
Guess who? Oh, this is good. And then what happened?
And so I'm setting the story up. So there was Aunt Dot who ended up having, growing older, having some health complications. She needed this major spine surgery at Mayo Clinic.
Wow.
My grandma did not want my Aunt Dot moving to Minnesota. It was like the war of the century. While Aunt Dot never was married and never had any children. And Aunt Dot needed family. And so my mom was in this, almost felt like she didn't really have a choice. My mom does have two siblings. One is a nun. And one is her brother, who was having some of his own stuff going on and just didn't have the capacity to do that. So my mom was the natural choice.
Your mom was drafted.
Straw.
Your mom was drafted.
The shortest straw because everybody else had made theirs and took her lengths and pasted it. I'm sitting there like, if your mom's sister's a nun, don't they get to just go to the monastery and they just kind of give them an outfit and give them a little habit thing?
I know. She was on mission. Maybe living overseas or something. I don't remember at that time, but just could not do it. So this was the year of 2006. My Aunt Dot moved from California with 2 suitcases and left everything in her home in California because she wanted to see where she would live to accommodate all of her things. She was very attached to her things, which she had collected her whole life. And I respect that. I get that. Well, the year of 2006, here I am now, fast forward, Nicole, I'm pregnant with my first child. And Aunt Dot moves here in October and I'm due in November with my first child. And I had all of these emotions where I was so upset that now again, I'm going to start crying. Oh my gosh. Now my mom's being taken away again. And I just wanted my mom. I was having my first baby and she couldn't be there. I mean, she was there for the delivery, but I wanted all that time with her. My mom was in a unique situation where she did not work full time and she was able to God love her, take care of all the people. And I wanted some of that. I wanted my mom. And so it was I was reliving not having my mom around. We've talked about the sits and I don't know why I'm getting emotional, and that's okay. So I had to work through all of these like complicated emotions because I understood why my mom was caring for our family. And I wanted her to do that. And I wanted to do that. And if it were my mom, I would absolutely be doing the same thing. Right. But at the same time, I was jealous. Then I felt guilty that I was jealous. Yeah. I was selfish. I wanted that time. I've always been probably more of a historical, thanks to my mother. I people pleaser. I wanted everybody to be happy. And I wanted, so I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. Now I've recovered from that. But I think it was I just had to be sad and I had to like grieve that my mom wasn't around. And so in caregiving, I feel like we focus on the caregiver, which is so important. And that's what I do every day for my job. And I was a caregiver for many years, but there's so many, it's the ripple effect that happens from those other relationships that I've had to spend years like almost healing from and working through and getting over. Yeah. Not getting over. I'm not over it apparently, but I've had to work through that.
It's okay to grieve for your loss because you did lose. I mean, we have these ideas in our head that what we want from our parents, and we look up to our parents and especially your mom. And that's where, I mean, you clearly were bonded with your mom, attachment kind of thing, but you lost a component of it because high school is different, that transition and where do you want that parent, even though we want to be independent, especially as teens, we still thrive for that connection, that relationship and validation. Yeah. And then you go to have a baby and you have this big change and you're like, well, what about me? And that's not selfish. That's, I don't think that's selfish.
Well, and I think just in my own personal experience, I think I hear that from my spouse who is, well, you're taking care of your mom. And we had this discussion just the other day because I go up there for a week for respite. So I have mom and then we have Emily and then I'm helping take care of Emily. And then he's holding it together here in Florida. And it's kind of, I come back and there's, he's got a man cold, whatever you want to call it. And so he's kind of, fussy about it. And he finally says, it was just different before we had to do all this to take care of your mom. And I'm like, whoa, you can't say that. And then I'm like, okay, it really is kind of true. Right. But it is a ripple of, I didn't get to spend any time with you 2 weeks ago. And now I have to travel. And so it is, you're exactly right, Nicole. And so it is okay that he is, and that you were kind of, you are a little upset, like the things that you lose. It's time and that's okay.
And I don't think a little. I think you're allowed to have your feelings and emotions because if you don't say it, it will eat you up.
Yeah.
And those tears are just an outward expression of still the grief that you feel, that little piece of you. It's not that it's not resolved, but it is a piece of you that you wish that you had. There's a lot of pieces of me that I wish that I had with my mom, for example. JJ knows that. Yeah. I grieve. I don't like Mother's Day because I watch other people with their relationships with their mom and it makes me feel very jealous. And I don't get on Facebook on Mother's Day because of that. And so when you think about it, but you do something different. So your experiences allow you to do something different as a parent yourself.
Yeah.
And I know you have 2 children, which JJ and I still think you're in your 20s.
My gosh,
this was just the other day.
I mean, they're infants, obviously. You said 2006. I was like, your kids are like.
Hey, ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the U.S. and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, It's free. Okay. Back to confessing.
They're like 2.
No, they're only 2.
So Aunt Dot is Aunt Dot is ill.
Yeah.
So Aunt Dot is ill. So she moves in. No, she's there. She's left all of her stuff in California. So that component, and then your grandmother, I don't know what her health is. So how is all this? Is everybody still well?
How it all played out. Yeah.
So where is everybody?
Right. So Aunt Dot did have extensive spine surgery at Mayo, and that was all during the birth of my first child. And so she ended up moving into a rehab community because you need that support, right? You need therapy and all of that. So she did not actually ever end up moving in our family home. Grandma, so Grandma was in home, and Grandma was like, praising Jesus for that.
She saw unspoken prayer answered.
Yeah. So backstory, my mom's trying to take care of my grandma, who's having literally a nervous breakdown, that Aunt Dot is coming to Minnesota. She did not want Aunt Dot to take over what she viewed as her family and her life. And so Aunt Dot moves into senior living community.
In Minnesota?
In Minnesota, she ended up shipping all of her things once she found her perfect apartment to Minnesota and got settled after therapy and whatnot. And Grandma continued to live in our home. Well, fast forward, and I don't remember the exact dates, but fast forward, Grandma ended up having surgery and also falling in our home, and right after her surgery, actually. So it was going to be more of a mild recovery, ended up changing the course of her life and our life. That ended her living in our family home. And I remember my mom feeling so much overwhelming stress about, what if Mom needs more care? Mom isn't going to want to, move anywhere. She's going to want to stay home. How am I going to make that decision? Do you break her heart? Do you, you can't provide for her? And my mom, her prayer was just that it was really, really clear. Either way, whether she was going to stay or move. And it ended up being, unfortunately, very clear. And so Grandma ended up moving into a community. And when I say that all things come together.
I love this part.
Just tell me they were roommates.
All things come together.
No, it's even better.
They were not roommates. But I was working in senior living at the time as a director. I was overseeing some different departments, and both Aunt Dot and Grandma were able to move into the community where I worked.
Oh, that's great. That's God's hand to say, not yet, young lady. You're not rid of those ladies just yet.
Because Nicole, that's what you had gone into.
So this is the interesting part.
This is your path.
Yes.
You decided, I think not only do I, because you have this, it's like a double-edged sword.
Right.
Like I love my aging, I love my grandparent, I love my family. And I also have some conflict over here. So I think I'll go work with more older people.
Right. Exactly. I think I'm just going to throw myself in the middle. There was this whole, I think for me, I really learned, and I didn't have the words to articulate it at the time, but that two things could be true at the same time. I could feel immense gratitude and joy in that relationship and dynamic, and learn from it, and admire my mom and witness so many incredible things, and feel jealous, frustrated, grief, all of that, and that it could live together. And I had to develop my skills to be able to articulate that later in life, but that was part of it. So I knew that I always gravitated towards older adults growing up, and my grandma was a perfect reflection of that. And coupled with education, and ended up studying gerontology. So got my degree in social gerontology, which is the study of aging. and working in senior living and growing, not only being a professional caregiver during college for many years, which gave me the best, experience and understanding of really the hard work and the day to day and everything that goes into that. So yeah, my worlds collided all at the same time. And so now grandma moved in and Dot moved in. I was working in my professional life. What the beauty of that whole situation is that my mom would come almost every day, probably almost every day. And I then had now time with my mom. I was working full time and had a big job, but those 15 minutes or 20 minutes, or I would take my lunch break and I would go and I would sit with grandma and mom, and I would have all this time as an adult to grow our relationship in a different way. And it was this unexpected gift of time, for sure.
Wow.
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You're so right, because it's funny. Your two worlds did collide. And then the fact that your mom was coming to visit every day, but she sees you too. Mm-hmm. And there's something there, you know what I mean? Like there's that, I can't imagine getting to do that.
Mm-hmm. It was almost like this redemption of time we had lost in a way to some extent. And that she could see me in my world and I could share that with her and with my grandma, and I could be a part of my grandma's plan of care and talking with the nurses and giving them more perspective. It was just this really beautiful time, to be honest. It was hard because health was changing for both of them. So my mom always felt really torn. And when I look back, and at the time I had such compassion for her because I knew that she wanted to be there for me as the 15-year-old. She wanted to be there for me as the new mom. She wanted to be there for me as I'm raising, my babies. She also felt this immense push and pull and tug and wanting to be there for her mom and her kids. And I have compassion for that. It was just as hard, if not harder, on her. She was not only tired and exhausted, but she's trying to be there for everybody, right? There's only so much of us to go around. So I have so much, I just have so much care and love for the situation that she was in. And she really felt torn between my grandma and my Aunt Dot. They would, not fight nicely about it. And they would, or my poor mother, they would make her feel bad for the other. And it was just relationships and families are complicated.
They're messy.
They're messy.
The messy word. Yeah.
They're messy.
They're so messy. And this was extremely messy. And my aunt would have this tendency, given her military background, to really just talk down to my mom a lot. And my mom, the beauty in that, really developed her boundaries and speaking up for herself and all the things that I wish I would have witnessed as a young person. I got to see her practice as an adult, and that I was able to learn from that. We can care for people, but we don't need to be verbally abused by the people that we care for.
That's right.
And being able, no matter my grandma's health, my mom would always kindly say, you know what, you can't talk to me like that. And if you do, I'm going to leave. And I'll come back. And if you're ready to change your tone, then we can move forward. And it was I learned so much from her. Yeah. Because of that dynamic, my mom's prayer was, I just want, if they both pass away at some point, I just want a little time with just my mom, And what happened was my aunt's health declined. She ended up passing away in 2012. And my mom had 1 year, almost to the date, with my grandma. And my grandma passed away in May of 2013. And so it was my mom, we were talking about it the other day and she was like, it was the most incredible year. It was like this one-on-one time, my kids were older. We didn't demand as much as grandkids and as children. And I spent a lot of time with my mom and my grandma during that last year. And it was just this beautiful time of sharing and learning. And I remember asking my grandma questions and I wanted to like grab onto everything. Like what was her favorite recipe and where did she like to go golfing and what was her time like as a little girl being raised by her grandmas. And so I just wanted to like soak it all in because you kind of know for some people when that time is coming. And so we were able to have that. We were able to have that year together.
Wow. I'm going to tell you, like, I think you're one of the most insightful people, but it's a testament. Like you said something that none of our other guests have talked about is that ripple effect and I think that's why it's so important to show people different views of caregiving and how it impacts others. But the fact that your 15-year-old self, and if you went in tens, your 15-year-old self versus your 25 versus your 35. And of course, we don't know how she's possibly older than 35. But I think that's so important because as we get older, we see that. But I also wonder if down deep, you also provided so much support for your mom, who was a caregiver. You were a big caregiver. I mean, you were a caregiver for your grandmother. You were, and for your Aunt Dot and so forth. Yeah. And, but through your study and through your experiences, you were able to help your mom in that time. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. I think, you don't even know that you're doing it, and that's the purpose of it. But God puts us in so many certain places his plan is perfect.
Yeah, it is. It is. And my mom would say, and I remember that too. I remember being able to offer insight into different things at the time where my mom would ask questions and she would even say the fact that I worked in this amazing senior living community, it gave her so much peace of mind. Like my daughter's there. She knows who works there. It's not only, I think, one of the best in the Twin Cities, but it was just that she didn't have to start from scratch and go, what do I do? Where do I go? It was this, we were able to support each other in different ways. And I think, at the time, at my 15-year-old self, and like you said, and then my 27-year-old self, when I had my daughter, I wasn't able to really articulate how I felt. And years later, as my mom and I would have conversation, we would be able to talk through some of those things. And as I worked more with older adults and families, I was able to express what I was thinking a little bit better. And I would say, if I can speak to, some of the things that I reflected on and that worked for me would be, having the courage to say what you need as a child of a caregiver, and having the courage to have the hard conversations. And even if even if things aren't going to change, I think I wish I would have said to my mom as my 15-year-old self, Mom, I just really need you, rather than acting out. And, my brother and I laugh about this, and we just told our parents this, but we would steal, this is horrible. We would steal
it's safe with us.
We would steal grandma's vodka. She kept vodka in her little, apartment. And my brother, I think would I can't throw him under the bus.
Yes, you can
refill it would refill it with water. My poor grandma was drinking watered down vodka. And then she would, back in the day, right, when people would smoke, she would have, cigarettes. And when she first, she was like, I'm really not going to do this in front of the kids, Jill. It's just, I want to be a good example, which I loved. I don't think we really ever saw her smoke, but we knew where she hid them. And so, rather than having all these hard conversations, we're like, let's steal the vodka. Let's,
Oh, you'll get your parents' attention one way or another.
Right.
And that's the funny thing is that in the background, that I need attention, that attention seeking, that's what those behaviors are.
That
Although it's like, this is a great idea.
Nicole's confession. She
I really feel like she's a smoker. Don't worry. My grandmother smoked too.
Oh my gosh. Right. It was like so common back then, but yeah, it's like have the hard conversation. I think that having a plan, we should have had conversation like, okay, Mom, what's our plan to spend and carve out time together that meet both of our needs, right? Like Mom cares for grandma and, senior living community. So it's like, do we do those things together, which we did later in life? We were able to have the time together and my mom could care for grandma and Aunt Dad. It's like, I think understanding, I wish someone would have said to me like, this is a season of life and it doesn't last forever. It does feel like it in the moment. But when I placed myself in my mom's shoes, of course I would want all this time with my mom and I would, I would want to be doing the same thing. Yeah. So I didn't have the perspective, right? So having someone just share perspective with me. Yeah. And then I think too, it's like, as a caregiver to not lose sight. I know we're so focused on who we're caring for, which rightly so, but to not lose sight of those other relationships because those other relationships are going to carry you through, each circumstance is so different, but don't forget to check in and nurture others, especially with your children. We can be models of how we communicate our needs, how we care for others, how we, speak to other people in our life. It's like we're setting the tone for the future of what we want our care to look like and be example of that love. I've had to work through a lot of forgiveness, of the power of forgiveness, not only for my mom, my grandma, my aunt, myself. It's like I've really had to do I've always said caregiving is an inside job. It teaches us more about ourselves, I think, than anything else. And just the perspective that, to witness and be a part of bringing someone into the other side of life, into death. It really changes you. You have compassion for others, for yourselves. And I think it gives, there was a beautiful thing someone said to me that as we get older, the beauty in aging is that it does create this urgency that time is finite. And with that, we're called to make certain actions, whether it's like, take the trip, make the call, give the hug, if we had infinite time, none of us would be urgent, I think, about maybe some personalities about really making things happen. And so for me, it's just given that perspective. And, my Aunt Dot traveled the world, which we share that love of travel and collected things from everywhere. But when I saw at the end of the day, and things bring us joy, right? I have things that I've collected from my trips that bring us joy. But when I saw at the end of the day, and she moved across states to a place she'd never loved and had a tiny, 2-bedroom apartment, it was big for the assisted living she was in, mind you, some are very small. And she had to sit and make decisions about what to keep and what to get rid of. And I just, having been through that with some family members and even my grandma, you realize that all that stuff is stuff. And we spend a whole life collecting it to give it away. And I'm not saying everyone gives it away. We can pass it on. There can be beautiful things that happen with the stuff that we have, but it's changed me in that now I look at what I have in my life and it's like, okay, if it really brings me joy, I'm keeping it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't want stuff. I don't want stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But for
I
each of
agree.
us, that's different, right? Like for what we value is different, but it's changed me in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Nicole, I want to make sure. So at some point you stepped out of this job, this arena of this healthcare, and you started, everybody, this amazing
podcast years ago. Because hers ain't new. Like she's a mentor to us. Like she's like the bomb.com.
She's the bomb.com, but she is a mentor to us because we've listened. And I will say that Nicole has shared things with us that you call and we're like, Nicole, we don't have this disclaimer, or we don't understand this. And she's like, use mine. And so, which is amazing to us. And then you also started this boutique
Gigi Betty,
in honor of your grandmother. And so I just want to make sure that we share this because it's amazing to me, all the things that you've taken from your years and just continue to share all these resources.
Like you're a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Gigi Betty is that it's so personal and it's the things that like resonate with you. And so what you sell, quote unquote, is honestly the joy that you find and the memories of your happy times. And I think you're selling happiness and you extend that and you want people to have that. But I think it's one of the most beautiful things. Like JJ and I just loved it. It's because every item is personal to you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was out of walking life with my family and out of my professional world. And I always felt like, when you're kind of in the world of senior living or elder care and gerontology, I felt like I had access to people and initiatives and what was happening. And for me, it was like, why do families not have access to these speakers or educators or authors or experts or whatnot? And they do, and more so now they do.
Right.
But back when I, had that idea, it was like, I just want to get this into the hands of families, and
Absolutely.
They're the ones that are doing the hard work every day, and we're in it. And how about we bring those worlds together and give families hope and encouragement and information and resources? So willGather is the company, and the podcast is navigating the world with your aging loved one. And so it's interview style. We bring, oh my gosh, everyone from talking about caregiving, family dynamics, to educators, dementia care specialists, to age tech CEOs, to authors and innovators, and health and wellness and self-care, and all the things that I feel like encompass that world.
Yeah.
And then, share that with the people.
Right.
And then Gigi Betty was this idea of, I'm a caregiver. My mom, my dear friend, cared for a woman with dementia for many years. And my love language is gift giving. I'm a gift giver. And I always felt like I wanted to give something meaningful that had purpose, but there wasn't much out there that was specific to being a caregiver or loving a caregiver or supporting a caregiver. Or if you even don't know any caregiver, the part of our proceeds donate for respite care for caregivers. So, just that whole idea of how can we elevate the space and that awareness, raise funds, hopefully. And then also, like we say on our website, caring is beautiful. And when we come together, when we support each other, when we empower other people, when we say like, I'm thinking of you, or just that gesture that people are not alone. I think if we do that as a community, it just elevates the space. And our way of doing that with Gigi Betty is through the jewelry, and hopefully other merchandise to come soon. So stay tuned for that. But
I'm going to tell you what a blessing Nicole is.
Yeah.
Like she's showing how she really, you've had the good, the bad, and the ugly in this sense. And you know what? That is life. That is the beautiful part of a uniquely well-lived life, is that it's not every day is perfect. And that you grow more resilient and find more joy and those glimmers of happiness in the hard times, so that when you have the good times, it's just so much more bright. So, Jay, you know what time it is, right? Although I feel like I know her guilty confession.
Yeah, I know I kind of gave it away early.
It's true.
Okay, JJ, what's your question? What's your sister question?
I have to say this. So we're absolutely going in the show notes and everything. We have the grandma Bird. Bird was our grandmother, and she reminds me so much of the stories I've heard about Gigi Betty. Mm-hmm. We will have in the show notes the way to get to Gigi Betty.
Oh, totally.
The resources, the funds, and it explains a lot of it on the website for it. What is when you guys see it, you got to check this website out. What's your favorite piece on there? And tell me kind of what was the inspiration for it?
Oh yeah. Okay. That's an easy one for me. So my favorite piece is the Gigi necklace. The signature necklace, and it is 18 karat gold plated. It has our willGather logo, which is like this beautiful emblem, and it's 4 arrows that are coming together, and it just represents the coming together of caregiving and older adults and families and all of what that encompasses. And so that is the piece I wear all the time. Yeah. And I designed that I was very specific on the size of the medallion and where it sits on you and everything like that. And my grandma just was super classy. Simple was best. And so it just is super simple but beautiful, and it's a piece that you can literally wear with everything and layer with other necklaces. It's at the right length where you can easily put it with a different necklace that you have and that you love. So that's my favorite. You
may see that on our page. I don't know. We may see that out there now.
Yeah, I really am not going to lie to you. I feel like that. And so here's the last question before we let you go. What is your guilty confession? What is the guilty thing that you do for yourself? Because this is different than going and stealing and alcohol.
Right. That was like alluding to the guilt. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your guilty confession? Because everybody has to talk about their guilty confession.
Okay. And so guilty confession is what I do for myself. Is that okay? What do I do for myself? Okay. Here's what I do. I am obsessed with coffee. To the point where if I go somewhere and I order the coffee and it is not strong enough or it does not taste great, I'll be like, no. But here's really where the guilty pleasure comes in, is I found this Ethiopia blend that's like, oh my gosh, it's so good. But I put heavy whipping cream and maple syrup in my coffee.
Oh, that's the guilty.
Maple syrup.
Maple syrup.
You know what? It is sugar and heavy whipping cream.
Right. And it's like out of all the things, I work out or, eat pretty healthy for the most part, but I will not be giving up my heavy whipping cream. I am like, no, that will steal the joy out of my morning. I go to bed thinking about waking up and drinking my coffee.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
In the show notes, we will put Nicole's address so you can send her maple syrup.
Yes, I know. So we tap our trees and, it varies. So we tap our maple trees and make our own maple syrup, which is so fun.
Oh, you make your own maple syrup? That's even better. Like Vermont has nothing on you.
On Nicole.
Nothing.
We got it.
Minnesota maple. That's what you should do. Oh my gosh, Minnesota maple. Oh.
I know.
The next thing on Gigi Betty's site
is Minnesota maple.
Minnesota maple.
Minnesota maple.
Nicole,
I would like to know.
I cannot tell you how much we have enjoyed.
You're such an honor. You're a total sister to the LA girls.
Even though you stole vodka as a young child, we're still okay with that.
We've all made poor choices.
Yes.
Exactly.
But it has been an absolute joy. And we so appreciate your time and sharing with us and our audience.
So thanks everybody for listening. Until the next time that we confess. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.